everything. What looked like an early blowout came down to the final seconds. Injuries, dramatic returns, aggressive play, and big shots, and ultimately a 109-103 hit win to take the lead in the series, 2-1. I can finally breathe again, and we'll break it all down on today's live edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a bonus episode of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. We're going live right after Game 3 to cover what was an incredible, emotional, dramatic, and fantastic win for the Miami Heat. Kyle Lowry made his return, playing his first game of the series, and the Heat would need him down to stretch because Miami would be capitalizing on the absence of Robert Williams. He was out for the Boston Celtics, and they would build a 26-point lead early on. That first quarter was incredible, an impressive display of offense where they were just pressuring Boston completely on defense and then getting whatever looks they wanted. They got an incredibly aggressive play from Bam Adebayo. He heard the criticism, some warranted, some excessive, and he was fantastic from start to finish with 12 points in the first quarter to help build that 21-point lead at the end of the period. But then things started getting a little shaky. In the second period, the Celtics would make a comeback, close the gap, and wind up going into halftime just down 15, feeling like momentum was shifting in their favor. At the start of the third quarter, things got even worse for Miami with the announcement that Jimmy Butler would sit out the rest of the game with knee inflammation. He would not return, although we'll talk about that a little bit later on and see whether or not he'll be available for Game 4 on Monday. And Victor Oladipo would start in his place. He would provide some great minutes, provide some great defense and some clutch shooting. And then from there, it was just back and forth with Boston slowly chipping away that lead. Then it was 10, then it was 5. Then they cut it down to 1 until some big shots from Max Strus, Victor Oladipo, Kyle Lowry, etc., even Bam Adebayo getting in on it towards the end there. And ultimately leading Miami to a Game 3 win. Incredible performance from Miami Heat, who just found a way to get it done without their leader.
Yeah, there's so much to carve into with this game, right? And I'm not even in a state of mind to get into like the X's and O's and all that kind of stuff. This is just such an emotional high right now, an emotional win. I'm still a little kind of stressed out because of how wild that fourth quarter was with the start and the stops and the officiating. I've got a bourbon right now. I have to have it, man. It's Saturday night, and I'm stressed out still from this game. You've earned it. I have earned it. I worked hard for that win. But I guess we could start with, you mentioned just finding a way to win. That was such a weird game, having lost Jimmy Butler at halftime, bringing back somebody like Kyle Lowry, Victor Oladipo out of the planned rotation in the first half very clearly, right? And then because Butler gets hurt, comes in and starts the second half and has a monster second half. There's yes, they found a way to win. They found a way to hold on. Again, another game where, just like in Game 1, they have one blowout quarter, and then I think they lost every other quarter after that. And so, or maybe it was tied. They lost every quarter after that. So, but they did it. It doesn't matter. I'm like, these are the playoffs, and I know that we can look at a team like the Celtics in the last game. Oh, they're not going to shoot 50% again or whatever. Like, that's just not really how the playoffs work. Like, weird stuff happens every game. Maybe a lot more in this game, weird stuff happening, but this is the way it is, and that's why both of these teams, Miami and Boston, are here, is because they've won weird games all season long, and that's why they're the teams that are here, right? They're teams that overcome adversity, and for the Heat, they've just been so good at that. And not having your star player in Jimmy Butler was a really big deal. Fortunately, Chris Haynes being first to report that he is not that they are optimistic that he won't have to miss any more time in this series. Eric Spoelstra after the game saying that he's not even going to need an MRI, which is a really good sign. That's a really good sign. So optimism right now in the Heat organization that Jimmy Butler will be available for Game 4. So we could put that to bed for now, at least. But all of that kind of boils down to this one thing, David, and it's really where we need to, I think, have to start this conversation. Bam Adebayo, 31 points on 15 of 22 shooting. That's more points than he's had in the last 3 playoff games combined for him, right? it was an absolute difference maker, Kyle Lowry being back. But even more than that, I just thought it was his assertiveness. It was just the overall assertiveness from him. His decision to say, you know what? I'm going to establish deep post position. I'm going to drive against whoever's in front of me, whether it's Marcus Smart or Al Horford. I don't care anymore. And we hear all this stuff about Bam being that unicorn center and why, he's too big for a small to guard him, but he's too quick for other traditional bigs to guard him. And we saw that. That was on display. This is the version of Bam Adebayo that the Heat need, not just to win this game, which they clearly did, but to win the finals. If they're going to win a championship, they need this version of Bam Adebayo. Not necessarily 31 points every single night, but much closer than that than the 6 points that he was scoring in previous games.
I don't necessarily want to be a wet blanket here because I think Bam was fantastic. But how much of that do you credit to the fact that Robert Williams wasn't there occupying space? They started Daniel Tice in the game and then eventually substituted him in the third quarter for Grant Williams, who has been known to challenge, body up on Bam, etc. He can use his physicality to a great degree there. He also flops and draws fouls.
Yeah.
But Robert
Grant's been
Williams
the better defender, I think. Yeah. But you're right. No, Robert Williams – and the way that they've had him planted in the paint, basically guarding a non-shooter in the Heat rotation and just having him planted, that was definitely a factor. But if Bam is aggressive the way that he was, like Robert Williams is probably the least switchable defender that Boston has when you're talking about their bigs. Yeah. And if you're Bam, you could still do that stuff. You could still draw Robert Williams out. Like that's the whole point. Robert Williams is very much a traditional type of center, or closer to that much than Bam is. And so he should be able to blow by him, right? And he should still be able to kind of sky over him. Like these are all the things that Bam should be able to do. Not having Robert Williams in there was definitely a factor, absolutely, because of the way that they use him defensively. But I just think that's why you need to have this level of aggression if you're Bam.
Right. And having said that, Bam was, to your point, fantastic. Just working his way around the basket, challenging smaller players, working in the low post, nifty layups around the rim, doing everything. Nice touch, nice arc on his jump shot. Just looked like the best offensive player. They're the best offensive version of him by far that we've seen in the playoffs and have seen in a long time. He has not been this type of player. So partly the need to be aggressive, partly Kyle Lowry being inserted in the starting lineup, getting him open looks early. That was I think,
huge.
It was. He was
getting in the pick and roll specifically.
Yes, exactly. Looking to make that connection with Bam, seeing the mismatch the way only Lowry can, the way the only Heat player on the roster who can see when those mismatches are happening and fire really the right pass. Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. Like they did such a better job in this game in exploiting those mismatches, I thought, right? And usually Jimmy is the guy that does that. And then when you don't have him for the third and fourth quarters, like you kind of feel like, okay, where's the mismatch game go? It was very much Lowry, not even necessarily. And Kyle Lowry actually took I think he took Tice once, he took Horford once off the dribble. He even took Jaylen Brown off the dribble a couple times. Like he was going for it. Lowry, by the way, looked great, much better than the Lowry we saw in that Philly series, right? Like he looked awesome. Yeah, like he had a better first step than Tyler Hero did.
Yeah, that's something we'll talk about at some point because I know Tyler.
I guess we should talk about Hero.
Definitely, he's going to get some criticism for his performance tonight. He's been challenged and he has not stepped up. I wondered before the game even started how much of an impact Lowry would have offensively in terms of his scoring productivity, because obviously at his age, it's not easy to come back from this extended amount of rest. But you're right. He did look quick. He looked engaged. His shot wasn't necessarily falling, although he did hit a couple of big shots. He was 2 of 7 from 3-point range, 4 of 11 overall. But it was just his playmaking, sensing the way the plays were going down, finding PJ Tucker when he's in the corner or calling out a mismatch, telling guys where to go on the court, directing traffic. The floor general. This is the version of Kyle Lowry that you want. Plus, maybe a little extra scoring here and there, but overall,
11 points, great 6 assists, 2 turnovers. So let me ask you this then. I think there's a part of this from Boston's side where you don't expect Jason Tatum to go 3 of 14 for 10 points again, right? I think there's certainly, if you're the Celtics, you could say, look, we were in this game, and if Tatum even has something close to a normal game, then maybe we win this one. We kind of steal this one away after such a bad first quarter. Miami outscoring the Celtics 39-18 in that first quarter. Again, that's not really how this stuff works, right? Like if Tatum's going, maybe Jaylen Brown isn't going for 40 points and all that kind of stuff. But I think if you're a Celtics fan, that's the conversation you're probably having if you're trying to look for optimism. But I think now the Heat, if Jimmy Butler does come back and doesn't have to miss time, as these latest reports are indicating, Kyle Lowry is back and looks great, like we just talked about. Bam Adebayo, this level of aggression for Bam Adebayo.
Yeah.
The Heat now have a 2-1 lead in this series. They lost home court advantage and then just snatched it right back in the first chance they had in Boston. Do they now have control of this series? Should they be expected to win this series with their team back? Their team is intact, and you have Bam playing at this level potentially.
Well, I don't know how realistic it is that he can see this version of Bam moving forward. I do have concerns about Robert Williams, although I think can be a mix. You can get a version of Bam that's slightly more aggressive, certainly than what we saw in game 2. Like, he took 22 shots today. I don't think that's going to stay around there. I would expect more around 15 to 18, especially if Williams is in there. And then especially if Jimmy's back too, he's going to take over. He's going to do what he does. It's been effective. It's carried Miami up to this point. So I'm not so sure whether or not we're going to see this aggressive version of Bam, especially if you have to balance that out with Jimmy's productivity. And that's perfectly fine. You're going to get a couple more shots from Kyle. Maybe Tyler will step it up, etc. But to your overall question about whether or not Miami is taking control of the series, I think they have. I really think they have. There's a statistic I saw before the game that the winner of Game 3 has gone on, especially if the series tied 1-1. The winner of Game 3 has gone on to win the series 73% of the time. Certainly a strong factor in Miami's favor. But having said that, you and I were just talking about it. Now, all of a sudden, Boston has to win 3 of the next 4 games. I don't see this version of the Miami Heat with Lowry back, with Jimmy expected to return in Game 4, with PJ Tucker playing at a high level. Miami still didn't play their best game and still was able to win this one, especially without their star player, Jimmy Butler, and with the emotional return of Marcus Smart, who suffered an injury, with Jason Tatum coming back despite his struggles and coming back into the game. They got all these emotional boosts. That crowd was a crowd full of white pasty people cheering on when Marcus Smart came back into the game.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. Like, this WWE nonsense from the Celtics was ridiculous, man. Like, Marcus Smart rolling his ankle, writhing in pain on the ground. I actually felt bad for him. Like, he sold me on that. I was like, wow, this really, like, this, he looks like that sucks. You never want to see that from anybody, right? Like, unless it's like, whatever. But and then he comes back and and then the Celtics play like him, like warming up, like on their Jumbotron. And all the fans are getting crazy and hyped up. I was like, all right, like, that's kind of cool, I guess. And then Tatum was like, I'm never going to be showing up. Like, and so he has to like hurt his right shoulder. Now he's laying on the ground for 10 minutes and then he goes to and then he comes back out and the Celtics fans do it again. Like, oh my God, our star, he's back. Like, they just won't quit. These are our heroes, blah, blah, blah. Like, enough of this WWE nonsense. Instead of faking your injuries, just play the game. How about that?
I mean, Smart, at this point, it looked like Smart probably could have just gone to the sideline and been fine. I don't know what
the camera got him with Sas Castillo kind of grabbed him and he was just like, hey, you good? You're fine? And like Smart's like, yeah,
did you hear the broadcast?
He rolled my ankle.
Did you hear the broadcast crew, like, as he's running behind in the hallways there outside of the locker room? They're showing the footage. They cut to the live footage on the ABC broadcast, put it on the Jumbotron in the Boston arena. The crowd starts going crazy when they see him running back there. And as he's walking out running out into the crowd, everybody starts going crazy. It's just ridiculous. Like,
does Jimmy Butler play the second half if the Heat don't have a double-digit lead?
No, I don't think so. I don't. I think because again, it seemed like momentum was shifting in Boston's favor. Like, the 21-point lead absolutely caught Boston off guard. Like, without Williams there, with Daniel Tice struggling defensively, without anybody hitting their shots early on except Jaylen Brown, they weren't getting much of a boost. And then that lead ballooned to 26. It looked like Miami was going to put things away easily. That wasn't the case. They had a 12-0 run, I think, in the second quarter, and then eventually cut that lead down to 15. The Heat got a little extra scoring there right before the end of the half. But it seemed like momentum was going back in Boston's favor. And I think that matters. Like, you go into the locker room and you don't feel quite as bad. If Miami had managed to hold on to that 26-point lead, then who knows what Boston's does. Although this is a Boston Celtics team that has shown the resiliency to bounce back from big blowouts like that. So I'm not exactly sure how they would have responded. Jimmy, however, he's a warrior. He's going to go out there. If he can't play, he just wasn't available. So I don't think it was a matter of him kind of sitting this out and going, no, my boy's got it. Or, I even wondered for briefly if, like, maybe he was just testing Bam to see whether or not he could continue that level of arrogance and say, no, I'm trusting Bam to keep it going. But I don't think so. I think
some Jedi mind trick stuff. No, like, it must have swelled up. They got into the locker room and he was just like, no way. And you know what? He might have even tried, and it might have been the Heat trainers being like, no, you're not playing. And it could have just been that, right? So, because you have bigger goals in mind. You mentioned the broadcast there too, and I thought it was a rough broadcast. by
Okay.
by the
Mark
crew there.
Jackson.
I'm a big Mike Breen guy. I think he's
Yep.
phenomenal. And it's hard because
I think Heat fans
there's
think
so many.
he's partial to the Celtics.
Really? I never really get
Yeah.
that sense. From Mike Breen? No.
Yeah.
All right, dismiss.
Heat
Heat,
fans
no,
are
no, I
convinced.
get it. Whatever. I don't care. Like every
All right.
fan thinks the broadcasters are against them. Mike Breen's awesome. I don't want to hear any of that.
All
But
right.
I thought it was a rough kind of last few minutes for them.
Yeah.
But hard to blame them because of all the weird officiating. I thought the officiating was terrible, and then that's not like me like against the Heat. It took the fun out of it, didn't it? Like
Sure.
There were some calls that went against the Heat. There was also some bad calls that went against Boston. I'm really not sure, like when the wash comes out, who actually got the worst end of the officiating at the end of the game there. But
yeah.
I know that the fans probably did because it was boring. Anyway. I actually thought the one thing that Mark Jackson I thought got right was I know that Jaylen Brown scored 40 in this game. I know, right? Jaylen Brown scored 40 in this game, and like Mark Jackson was like not impressed the entire time. And I have to agree with Mark Jackson on this. Like that was probably the worst 40-point game I've ever seen a basketball player put together. Like Jaylen Brown had 40. He had some really tough threes. Like good for him. Like whatever, man. But I said this going into this series, and I was saying it again. Jaylen Brown can't dribble the basketball. Jaylen Brown cannot dribble a basketball. And Victor Oladipo knows that. And Victor Oladipo had 4 steals in this game. And I think that he didn't get credit for like another 4 steals in this basketball game because it felt like he stripped Jaylen Brown straight from the basketball like 8 times in the fourth quarter alone. That was crazy what Oladipo did to Jaylen Brown. He punked him. And you looked at and at some point, like they said that Jaylen Brown, 31 points. And I was like, really? Because it kind of feels like he's having a garbage game. He had
12 free throw attempts. He had 12 free throw attempts. Like he shot well from the three-point line. Yeah, and a lot of those free throw calls just head scratching. Like he would fall because again he doesn't have control of his dribble. Next thing you know, he kind of bubbles all over himself, falls to the ground. It's like sure that looks kind of like a foul. Let's call it. And then he would get set to the line for 2, and it's like. Well, I don't know. I mean, look, he hit some tough shots, and yet despite that, I can see your point overall. Look, even Celtics fans were tweeting about it, that his dribbling has been a problem. It's been a problem his whole career. I don't know that's going to get any better. Kind of why we continue to say that Jimmy Butler was a better player than he was. I think that's pretty much a proven fact at this point. However, having said that.
Well, and Jimmy Butler's outplayed Tatum. Like, did Jimmy Butler finish with more points than Tatum? Two fewer points than Tatum, and Tatum played the entire game. Except for the little WWE segment that he had to have.
Half as many minutes,
also,
2 less points.
The weird thing with Tatum in this game, and I thought the Heat's defense on him was really good, right? Like they kept showing him bodies, and you have to take Tatum out of this game, especially when Jimmy Butler doesn't come down. PJ Tucker was so good, but then every once in a while, Tatum would get the switch that he wanted. Like he would get Gabe Vincent on him or Strus or whoever, and then just get rid of the ball. And that was so weird to me. Like and then he would just like pitch it to Al Horford, who isn't like your offensive weapon necessarily. Right. And I just thought that was so strange. And I'm like, I don't want to say the Heat are in his head, but I don't think that's the case. But I think they're just showing him so many different looks that he's a little confused, right? They're showing him so many different looks that he is a little out of it or confused or just
3 of 14 for the 4, 1 of 7 for 3-point range. Those were shots he was nailing. He was nailing them in game 2. Today, he just wasn't. And I think it was.
And in the Milwaukee series, I mean, and in the Nets series, like he was nailing them in the entire playoffs, David. And now, you want to give credit to the Heat. You also wonder, are they just is defensively what they're doing taking him out of rhythm? Sort of what we saw them do against Trae Young, what we saw them do against. To say James Harden was ever in a rhythm is a little bit of a stretch, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So there's a lot there. Should we get to credit cookies?
Yeah, because I kind of just you mentioned PJ Tucker and I brought him up too. It's like I just want to rave about him. Like that motherfucker's fire is so damn great to watch. Like watching Grant Williams try and challenge him. He's like, "Get your fucking hands off me!" Like he
that was great.
Want to get touched by him.
That was great.
He hands the ball. He's like, "I'm giving the ball to the fucking ref. Get your hands off me."
Yeah,
that was
Grant Williams is maybe the most annoying player in the NBA. And I don't even mean that necessarily as a criticism. I think because he wants to be. Like, that's on purpose by Grant Williams. Like, congratulations. You have accomplished – you are now the most annoying player in the league. If we had an award for it, you would get it. Like, congrats. Maybe that should be the Larry Bird Award, not the MVP. That should be the most annoying player in the league, the Larry Bird Trophy. He's more annoying than Marcus Smart, which is crazy. Like, Marcus Smart's whole thing is that I'm really annoying. I want Defensive Player of the Year because I'm annoying. I don't know.
I know.
I don't know. I mean, the WWE thing, like the Marcus Smart
Well,
faking
that's one
the
thing.
role,
Like also Marcus,
that kind of makes it closer.
like
But
his
Grant,
big
man,
shot making
he's
ability has
consistent.
been his big shot making ability has really like I did not expect this version of Smart. Like I know Smart is offensively challenged. Past versions of him, especially against Miami in the Orlando bubble a couple of years ago, like you wanted him to shoot early and often because he wasn't going to be able to find that stroke at any point. This is not the same version of Smart. He's much more confident as a shooter now, much more competent as one too. Like even after he came back from injury, he had that one shot along the baseline there where I think he pump faked Gabe Vincent up in the air, put the ball down, nailed the 3-pointer, and helped cut that lead to single digits. Yeah,
to 10. It was 10. Yeah, he comes back with like 7 minutes left. The Heat are up 72-59. I have that as a note. Smart hits that corner three, cuts the lead to 10, and the Boston crowd is going crazy. It feels like the Heat lost momentum. And then I know it was a rough game for Tyler Hero. He hits a mid-range jumper. And to your point with PJ Tucker, Hero then drives and kicks. Tucker hits a three. And what was a 10-point lead goes back to 15 with a minute to go. And that was really big. A couple other plays before we move on to credit cookies here that just stand out to me. The Heat went about 4 minutes without a basket. Boston used that 12-0 run to cut the lead to 1 with 2.5 minutes to go. Max Strus, huge three-pointer to end that run. Heat go back up 96-92. And then that Kyle Lowry steal.
Yes, on the inbound.
David, I can't tell you the last time I've leapt out of my chair watching a basketball game. I know I've done it in my past.
Sure.
I can't tell you the last time I did it. I leapt off the couch.
Dwayne Wade game winner, I think.
That honestly, that might have been it. That might have been it against the Warriors.
Yeah.
That could have been it. That would not be a stretch. It's probably been that long. I leapt out of my seat and I yelled, "Kyle!" expletives. I don't even remember which one. Lowry.
All of them.
And then before he even got the ball to Max and Max scored on that. Like before he even did that, I was already out of my seat and in the air. That was an incredible play. Kyle Lowry gets so pumped after that. He is screaming. You love to see
crouched
that, man.
down, pumped in his fist as he's walking.
Unbelievable.
Sideline. Yeah, great momentum.
19 steals is a franchise playoff record for the Heat. And again, it felt like it was more. It was just all the time. Yeah. And what was it? 30 points off turnovers for Miami tonight. Like for all the free throws that Boston got, the Heat made up for it with just taking the ball and then scoring the ball. 33 points off turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hinted at it, and we've got a couple questions about it. I know we're going to get to credit cookies soon. This is kind of a free form, and we want to get your questions in too. So if you're watching and you've got a bunch of people
send in your questions
already to the show, keep writing in questions. We'll pin them. We'll ask them throughout the show. We'll answer them as best we can. People are already talking about the ref and the officiating situation. Look, it was bad. I don't think it was particularly egregious. Like I know the Celtics certainly got more calls. They got some bad ones, as you said earlier. Miami also got some calls in their favor. What are you going to do? You can't fight the refs. And Miami, even if they were getting a lot of bad calls against them, I think they still persevered. Like we've seen other versions of the Heat, not this season.
It's a good point.
But other versions kind of crumble when the officiating goes away from them. They don't know what to do. Certainly last year against the Bucks, that felt like the case too. They just didn't have anything when the calls didn't go.
Well, the Heat just beat a team that does that, Philadelphia, right? Like when the calls don't go their way, they kind of crumble, right? And that's a sign of a weak team. It's a really good point by you, David. Like that. Again, I don't want to get into the whole officiating thing because it's just not fun to listen to. But there was one play, Max Strus getting called on that offensive rebound, where I think it was Grant Williams went over his back, and then I'm not really exactly sure what they called on Strus, but it was some sort of foul for just being smaller than Grant Williams. I think was the call. And
can we point out
that was a bad one.
For all of Hero's struggles offensively, he's made 2 consecutively really good defensive plays and gotten fouls called on both of them. Like it's ridiculous. Like he blocked Marcus Smart. They called a foul. I forgot who he was. He blocked in game 2. They also called a foul there. He's playing well defensively, which is again a huge stretch, something we did not expect to see from him. And he's getting foul calls. Like I think you kind of jokingly tweeted or texted this to me. It's like they're so surprised at Tyler playing great defense that they automatically blow the whistle whenever they see him make a play like that.
All right. So let's do the credit cookies. We have a lot of more people joining the live stream right now who probably didn't hear the Jimmy Butler news because there's a bunch of people in the comments. Jimmy Butler, according to the recent reports, optimism within the Heat organization that he will be available for Game 4. Eric Spoelstra post-game saying he's not even going to need an MRI, which is a really good sign. So that's the latest on the Jimmy Butler thing if you're joining us on the live stream lately. Credit cookies. It's that winning time, David. We're in the kitchen. We're whipping up some credit cookies. What kind of cookies are we giving out today?
Anticlimactic. Let's just go the classic, the good ones. For a game like this, you got to go chocolate chip, man. Let's go Chips Ahoy chocolate chip. I think to me that's my favorite. That's a classic.
The classic ones, okay, because they have like the soft like ones now. But you
Chewy
want just,
ones,
like, the classic hard
classics. The classic heat win, gritty, tough, resilient, etc. Classic cookies to market. I think.
I like it. Gritty, tough, and then we can dunk them in some milk and make them soft like the Celtics. How about that?
I love it. All right, let's try that chocolate. So
first one's go to Bam. We already talked. We talked to Bam. I know we credit cookies. We give 10 of them out, and I really want to give all 10 of them to Bam. I love. Yeah. There is something just when I don't know if it's like a scarcity thing. You know what I mean? Like when Bam just was like, "Hey, I'm not aggressive. I'm not aggressive. I'm not aggressive" for several games in a row, and then he just kind of feeds it to you. He's like, "Hey, you wanted the assertive Bam Adebayo? Here you go." And there's something about it that just opens up the rest of the offense. Right? He's getting into the paint. He's getting easy buckets. What he can do on the pick and roll just turns into everything else. Early in the game, he was getting to the basket, and all of a sudden, that mid-range stuff starts. Right? Yeah. And specifically, you mentioned this before, but how Lowry was setting him up was so clutch. But even like Max Strus was hitting him with a couple pocket passes here and there. Bam's screening, I thought was really underrated in this game. Just rock solid screens, coming out of those screens with purpose, with force, and all that stuff. Like that's when you know it's happening with him. And then after that, he's getting to that free throw line extended. He's getting into those little push shots. Like you let that come after, but first you got to get to the basket. You got to get to the rim, and he was doing that early on. And then he was getting into everything else. So Bam, 31 points, 15 of 22 shooting. He was tremendous. The Heat don't win this game because he set without him. He set the tone.
Yeah, he broke their backs early on, and while they eventually found a way to come back, like without that cushion that he helped create, Miami loses this game pretty clearly. And to be able to score 31 points without relying on free throws, even though there were a number of times where he was knocked on his ass. We're talking about Bam Adebayo, the biggest, strongest player out there, and he was knocked down on several occasions, and just didn't get the call in his favor for whatever reason. To be able to only take one free throw and hit that one free throw and still wind up getting 31 points. What a beautiful game. And then he had that baseline jumper against Grant Williams where he kind of jab stepped him. He said, "Oh, you're going to give me that space?" And he just nailed it right in his face. Chef's kiss. That was beautiful.
Just latest on Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra says this. He didn't have his normal explosive burst. He's been able to manage this. The next 2 days will be really important. His competitiveness will overtake everything. I'm not sure that's medically true. At halftime, the trainers made the call, like I guessed. So that's what that is. All right, Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry. I don't even know how many did I give Bam. I don't even know how many credit cards. He got 6 of them. We give 6 of them. Yeah. All right, I'm giving. Lowry deserves 2 more, but we're tough. Yeah, he's getting 2 of them. Yeah. We mentioned the steal on the inbound play. That was just when you were talking about flashbulb moments of this playoff run for the Heat, however it ends, right? Yeah. That's going to be one of them. Is Kyle Lowry coming back after missing so many games, so many weeks, and coming back, and he had so much burst tonight, David. He looked so much better than he did when he came back in that Philly series. Kyle Lowry is here. He's here to stay. He did play a limited amount of minutes, just 29 minutes, right? Yeah. And I think they played
How
more
concerned were you before we found out? Before the Heat sent out that update, how concerned were you when after like 5 minutes of play, he went back into the locker room? We were going, holy shit, what happened? How did he go back to the locker room?
Mike, I was a little concerned. I would say from like 1 to 10, I was like at a 3. That like was like, it felt like, because he didn't look like he wasn't limping or anything. Like they had it pretty clear on the broadcast. Like, does he have to just pee? Is that like what it is? Because I can see that. But like the Heat, the funniest thing was the Heat Twitter, the official Miami Heat Twitter account being like, Kyle Lowry's okay. This is part of the plan. Like they just saw social media freaking out. I was like, yeah, you could have warned somebody, which is clear. Yeah. Like they obviously don't have room for a bike on the sideline at TD Garden. That's obviously what it was. And they had it somewhere in the back, and he was warming up back there. That's all it was.
Do they have any celebrities there? I know Heat fans have
LL Cool J.
Was that him?
LL Cool J was there.
That was him. Okay, I wasn't sure if that was him or not.
It was the only one I saw, though. Maybe they had more. I don't know.
All right. Yeah, you know what? People are chiming in that we need more than 10 cookies, and you're absolutely right, because PJ Tucker deserves another 2 cookies, but so does Victor Oladipo. I think those are the 2 guys that really
all right, how about
stand
this?
Out.
Bam gets 6 cookies. Lowry gets 6 cookies, because Lowry, first of all, boy could put down some cookies. That's pretty clear. And it's been weeks since he's
Oh,
been
shout
involved in
out
this.
to the orchid. Did you see that? He was walking from the team bus with like an orchid in his hand to the team hotel. Did you see that?
No, what?
No, Kyle Lowry, like walking from the team bus with an
Like a
orchid in his
lucky
hand.
orchid? Like the flower?
Yeah, like the orchid, the flower. Like he just had an orchid in his hand. This is like Kyle the poet, Kyle the sensitive nature, walking to the team hotel with an orchid. Why? I mean, a reporter asked, I can't remember who it was exactly, but asked everybody like why he had the orchid. It's like, I don't know, man. I guess he thinks it's pretty or something like that. But either way, Kyle Lowry walking with an orchid. This is the orchid game.
Well, before maybe there's something, the orchid game. I like it. He was very chill on the sideline before the game, just noticeably like kind of just taking in the moment, kind of getting into his headspace. I just thought it was
such a week and a half,
and
right?
it was it's been a long time, and it was such a controlled game by him. He came in, he was getting guys set up, and that's why it was that steal and the score by Max Strus there at the end was so just cool, because it was like you could see him creeping up at the end there, and he just grabs the ball on the inbound from the Celtics and then gets it to Max. And then it's all, again, so controlled by Kyle Lowry. But then as soon as Max scores and the Celtics call that timeout, he just unleashes this roar. And it was just like, and it was just all for that. It was just, it was a really cool moment. You're so happy for Kyle Lowry because you could tell the roar was more than just the steal and score. The roar was, I've beaten this stupid hamstring injury that was nagging me, that was lingering, it was keeping me out of the playoffs. It's the only reason I even play basketball at this point in my career. He's a champion. He's got a ring from 2019. He could have retired with the Toronto Raptors last year and just called it a Hall of Fame career, and that would have been it. But he went to Miami to do it again, and to not be able to play in the playoffs, you could tell how, I mean, it must have just been crushing him. And to do this on this stage, on the road in Boston, in the Eastern Conference Finals, was huge. Unbelievable game by him. He gets 6 cookies. Oladipo's getting 4 cookies, 1 for each steal that he had. I think all of them, 3 of them were on Jaylen Brown. 1 of them was on Jason Tatum, which was a really key one there late in the game. Oladipo was awesome. We had somebody, I missed who it was, but saying, the clamps, Victor Oladipo, Kyle Lowry, and he even threw, whoever had the comment, threw Max Strus in there. I wouldn't go so far, or maybe it was Caleb Martin. I don't know. But Caleb Martin, it was his best game of the playoffs, David. I'm not ready to give Caleb Martin cookies for tonight's game, but it was his best game of the playoffs. Victor Oladipo gets them. I think Eric Spoelstra gets cookies.
Eric Spoelstra. You see, now that I was curious about, because like I wanted to see exactly what kind of adjustments he made, and nothing really stood out in the game. And as we've been talking pretty consistently, like the ups and downs, the inconsistencies from a 26-point lead to just up by 1, having to navigate his way through that rotation. He absolutely deserves credit for finding the right guy to put in at the right moment. Like he put in Duncan early in the game. He put in Caleb at just the right spot. Late in the game, he took Tyler, who was struggling, and just put Oladipo out there. It just seemed to work. So I guess to that point, maybe he does deserve some cookies. Is that kind of what you were thinking in terms of giving him?
Yeah, like I said at the top of the show, we still need to watch this game again to really deep dive into what specific adjustments in the game plan he made from game 2 to game 3. Clearly, there were some adjustments. We give a lot of credit cookies to Bam Adebayo, but they were also, and obviously Kyle Lowry coming back was probably the biggest adjustment, is just having your dudes. Is probably the biggest adjustment, is being healthy. But there had to be some schematic changes. Whatever, I don't know what they were specifically. We have to go back and watch the film and find it. But whatever they were, it worked, right? So you got to give Spo some credit for that. And then, like you said, like missing your best player at halftime, and then being able to go to Victor Oladipo. And just so much credit to Victor Oladipo for staying ready that way. Like he was obviously out of the game plan, and then he was inserted into the starting lineup in that second half. That was huge. I think Spo navigating his way through this game. I think he made the right calls late, taking Tyler Hero out, having Max Strus close. That's not an easy call. That was an underrated call. Spo all season long, David, has defaulted to Tyler Hero and his playmaking and his shot-making abilities, even when Tyler Hero was not feeling it, has always defaulted late to playing Tyler Hero to close games. And I think I might be wrong on this, but this is like kind of the first high-stakes moment where he took Tyler Hero out at the end for another kind of shooter score in Max Strus. And Strus was huge at the end. And that was the right call is what I'm saying. But that's not an easy decision that Spo made, and I think that needs to be recognized.
Did you answer whether or not you think Miami has control of the series?
Well, I'm actually pretty surprised by you just sent me the orchid thing in the chat. That's hilarious. That's a beautiful orchid.
Yeah, there
Good
you
for
go.
him.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was. He just found it in Boston. He was like, "This is beautiful. I have to own this." And it's like, "Yo, credit to you, man. Do your thing." Um, took him more for like a lily guy, but like whatever. So you mentioned the stat that the team that wins game 3 wins like 73% of the time. I just think both
Right.
of these teams are so evenly matched, but that I hesitate to say that the Heat have control of the series. I just think that would be disrespectful to what Boston can do, and I don't want to like kind of overlook anything. But and it also largely depends on Jimmy Butler's health going forward. Even if he's available, is this inflammation thing going to be lingering? Because if as good as Bam was tonight, as great it is to have Kyle back, like if Jimmy's not playing Tatum toe to toe, I just don't see it happening for the Heat. They need him. They need him. They need their best player, which is not shocking. Like they need their best player.
Right.
So I hesitate to say that they have control of the series, but I'll tell you this: had they lost this game, this would have been the Celtics stealing a game they did not deserve to win. And I don't know that the Heat can come back from that had they lost this game. So it was huge that they held on to this win, that they grabbed back home court advantage. They have control of this series. They do. They now have home court. That's the whole thing. They're up 2-1. They need to win 2 of the next 4. Okay, that's a good spot to be in, especially when 2 of those, better than 3, and then 2 of the next 4 are at home. So that's a good deal. So yeah, in a much better position.
Do we have an update on Robert Williams and his availability? I know he was
sounded like it was a one-off, but like he's been dealing with this thing not just in this series. So I don't know. It's been since the end of the regular season that he's sort of been dealing with this. So he could be back next game, and then he could be out the next one after that. Who knows?
Yeah, and you know what? And this injury, Smart came back, Tatum came back, etc. Those things could kind of flare up, particularly Smart's ankle. Like that could swell up considerably tonight. In fact, I expected that it would if it's as severe as he hinted at it would. He might be out for Game 4, and if that's the case, and you start Derek White again. You got Peyton Pritchard who barely played tonight, and that's a matchup that Miami could certainly take advantage of, especially if Kyle Lowry is able to bounce back and stay healthy and be there for Game 4 as well. So, I mean, again, we'll see how it plays out on Monday, but it should be an exciting opportunity for Miami to potentially steal yet another game in Boston before returning home. But before we do that, just remember, keep sending in those questions. We want to answer.
Yeah, let's get to a few.
I wanted to ask you before we move on to specific questions from our viewers and listeners. How concerned are you about Tyler Hero? Like, what is it that you've seen that has taken Tyler out of the matchups? Because a lot of those shots were open. The shots that he's made, even as he drives to the paint, the floater, et cetera, just weren't there. He had a couple of shots. He did finish how many points did he have on the night? Was it 12 points, 8 points in the night, 4 of 15 shooting, 0 for 6 from 3-point range. I think that was the most egregious thing, is that there was a lot of shots there from the perimeter that he's knocked down all season long. He just didn't do so. And there were wide open looks too. And I don't know if he's uncomfortable. I don't know if he's out of it. I don't know if he's hurt even, because we just haven't heard anything.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I looked back at the injury report today, and he's not on it. Like there's no like Strus is on there with a hamstring injury, and he's been on there with a hamstring injury for a few weeks. And it's kind of like this fake hamstring injury because it's never been an issue. He's always listed as questionable, and he plays every game. So I don't know really what's going on with that. But I was wondering if Tyler Hero was kind of having one of these like fake injuries or kind of minor injuries that he's playing through, and he's not on the injury report. But he doesn't look like that first step isn't there the same way. Like I wonder if he is dealing with something and just not saying anything. He was apparently kind of having his leg looked at on the bench when he wasn't in games.
Yeah,
he's had his leg wrapped.
I think the broadcast
taped up. Yeah. And so maybe there's something happening there. But I also recall that being pretty common in the regular season, that he would just have stuff on his legs, and I think that's just part of his deal. That's just sort of what he does. So I don't know if that necessarily is an indicator of something being injured or hurt or whatever, but the burst doesn't look like it's there. He is settling for threes, which is weird. He was settled for a couple really early in the shot clock, which, that's kind of Tyler Hero's game. You kind of need that kind of do-it-yourself playmaking and shot making from him. That's his role in this offense. But part of you also wonders, like, okay, like, is he settling for threes because he knows he something's not right and he doesn't have that burst? I don't know. But then again, like defensively, I actually thought he held up. Like this was maybe the first game in Tyler Hero's entire basketball career where I thought defensively he was better than he was offensively. And he had moments. It's not to say that he didn't have moments. Like he had those big moments in the first half in game 1, right? And
Yeah.
then tonight he had a couple big buckets. He had, like I said, that big driving kick to PJ Tucker to turn that, what was a 10-point lead back to 15 for Miami earlier in the game. So he has moments, right?
Yeah. 3
But
assists on the night.
I am starting to get concerned with Tyler Hero, where this is not a situation where Boston is trapping him. They'll throw it at him every once in a while, but they're not doing it regularly. He's just the pick and roll game isn't really there with Bam, and I don't know what happened to it. The pick and roll game that was there against Atlanta, that was there against the early games against Philadelphia, they just have not been there. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
I
the
hate to
Celtics
say it.
defense. I don't know
Yeah,
what it
that's
is.
what I was gonna say. Yeah, I mean the long reach of Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, etc.
It's a tough matchup
certainly
for
makes
him.
things more difficult. Yeah, so it's hard to get any kind of spacing there. This is a player who thrives in finding those seams there and being able to get just enough space where he could get that jumper going. I mean, there certainly were open opportunities that he missed, but they're also making things more difficult overall. He's not getting the same quality of looks that he got throughout the regular season, and that's to be expected. If
Yeah.
Miami does wind up advancing, we'll see if he can finally get it going in the next round. But that's too far ahead. We don't want to look that far ahead just yet.
Well, we do have a
Let's get to
question
something
about
specific.
that
Yeah.
far ahead, but here's
All right.
one about Tyler Hero, more
All right.
specific. Tyler Hero's looking bad during the crucial third and fourth quarter. Should we replace him with Depot's intense defense?
Well, I would think that's the case. I mean, certainly Spo felt comfortable going with Oladipo as a closer, and it paid off. Like, I mean, he hit big shots, he hit big free throws when he was put on the line. This is ultimately, despite everything else and all the injuries, I mean, Depot's been here. He's been at the NBA level for such a long time. He's been in high stakes games. He's been through the playoffs. He's been tested. And I think now that he's finally inserted himself as a regular part of the rotation, we saw in game 2, he didn't get this kind of playing time. In game 3, he bounced back, stepping in for Jimmy, and he played an extremely good game. Like, it just, particularly defensively, he had some really, really outstanding moments where he was locking up Tatum, deflecting balls, etc.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with Victor Oladipo in this series, because when he's on the floor with Jimmy Butler, it doesn't work. It's just not working.
That's true. That's true.
And so maybe you just make him Jimmy Butler's backup just by
Yep.
default, and you separate their minutes as much as you can. You're probably going to have some overlap, but you also want him on the floor against Jaylen Brown, apparently, because he owns Jaylen Brown. He just straight up owns that dude. Like, he owns his dribble. When Jaylen Brown is dribbling, Victor Oladipo might as well be dribbling. Like, he can't do anything against him. So I don't know if you just align Depot's minutes with Jaylen Brown and be like, all right, like, you just take this guy out of the series. Again, This was the worst 40-point game I've ever seen by an NBA player. It was crazy by Jaylen Brown. I don't know, because he was out of the rotation. Like, the game plan going in was not to, like, Victor Oladipo was going to play 0 minutes in this game. And then Jimmy Butler gets hurt, and then they start Oladipo in place of Jimmy Butler in the second half. So I don't know what you do. I don't think it's a matter of replacing Tyler Hero with Victor Oladipo. I think you need to probably play both of them in this series. I don't know. It's tough for Spoelstra, though. You've got to find lineups that work, because let's get to this next one. This one comes from Duncan, about Duncan Robinson, from Eric, who writes in, do you guys think that having Duncan in the beginning is the reason why we were able to build the lead in the first place?
No.
I like the early Duncan Robinson minutes. I wouldn't credit him for the lead, but
I think it was already pretty
certainly
established. Yes.
No, but like you could tell a difference from a spacing perspective. And I didn't think that they had, like, Spo went with Duncan and Tyler in moments there, and they didn't get killed defensively. They did not get killed. I'll go back to what I was saying before. That's probably something that the Celtics can adjust, is like, hey, Tatum, when you get the switch that you want, don't pass the ball. Right? But they could be a little bit more mismatch hunting, the Celtics can, but they're not right now. And I think Spo recognized that and said, okay, they're not really looking for these mismatches. They're not really hunting these things. They're really just trying to get into their offense, which is fine if that's the Celtics game plan. There's not anything wrong with that. But that also allows us to play Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson together. Also, I thought was key that they went to a zone with those two guys, which sort of, that mitigates sort of their defensive issues there.
I think it was effective too.
I thought it was effective as well. Yeah, I thought it was a good look. So I don't know. I think Spo's got some real decisions to make about who he wants to play in this series. I've already I'm on the record as saying I don't know that this is the Caleb Martin series. I thought it was a much better game today than it was in game 2. So maybe you're not ready to yank him out. But I also thought Dedmon's minutes weren't great again tonight.
No.
Maybe that's where maybe you go small and PJ's your 5 and you're playing more spacing around him. As good as Gabe Vincent has been, like, if Lowry's back, maybe you want a little bit more versatility, right? And I didn't think this was the best Gabe Vincent game, especially defensively. I didn't think he was good. So I think there's certain things that Spoelstra could do, and certain things that we might be surprised by. All right, let's get to some more questions here. Oh, I like this one. Potterhead. Why don't we swap Keefe for his twin so that we can have another playable player?
I thought
Sounds
about that
ridiculous,
before.
but like, who would know?
No one would know.
No one would know.
The brothers don't even have to. Like they would talk about it beforehand, and he could just go in there. Both probably are quiet right now. Who knows? Like he would go out there. I don't think that his teammates would know it. I certainly don't think Spo would know. But I think at this point it doesn't really matter either because Spo is determined not to play Markieff Morris, which is somewhat
Let's
surprising.
say you did have Marcus Morris, floor spacing 4/5. He could play small ball 5 in today's NBA.
Yeah.
Much better scorer than Markieff is.
Yep.
Probably not as good as a defender as Markieff, but we're not talking about very high bars here.
Right.
Like, where would you play him? Like, probably the Dedmon minutes, right? You would give him to Marcus Morris.
Well, Dedmon only played 3 minutes, picked up 3 fouls, and he was completely out of it. Like this was a game where
he might be out of this. That might be more of a like break glass in case of emergency type deal.
Well, if Williams plays, and then you can go with more heavy, Tice minutes so in your second unit, then you can play Dedmon there because I think that matchup might be okay. But it was a little problematic to go up against smaller guys like Williams, et cetera. So I think that was the problem for Dedmon. He just didn't seem to have it. He looked good in game 1, just not so much in games 2 and 3.
I know you said you didn't want to look too far ahead, but we have a question about it. So
all right, let's do it.
What do you want to do? All right. ZZM Michael. Will we meet the Mavericks the next round? He does know that the Mavericks are down 2-0 in that series.
I should hope so. Yeah, a little less likely. I don't think so. I mean, I think. Well, you know what? They could go back home. As Bo has said many times, it's not a playoff series until you win on the road. So we'll see what happens if Golden State can continue that intensity in Dallas.
I am not ready to write off Dallas. They didn't look great in San Francisco, but I'm not ready to write them off. Like you said, you got 2 games in Dallas now. If you're the Mavericks. Right. I think
that series goes tied.
Luka,
yeah.
You think it's tied by the time they leave Dallas? You think it'll be 2-2?
So. Yeah, I think so.
I don't think that's crazy. I really don't think that's crazy.
Doncic will go off. Their defense just ups it to another level there. It's good. It's interesting. Look, I mean, again, let's not look past the Celtics necessarily because who knows? They could have a big bounce back game, and they've already shown the capacity to win on the road, dealing Miami their worst playoff loss in the franchise's history. So I don't think it's. I'm not quite ready to say the Celtics are done and the Miami's are going to be able to put their stamp on them. I like where Miami is. Miami's certainly in the pole position right now. They're up 2-1. They went to Boston, punched them in the mouth. They've got more injury issues on that side that they'll have to deal with. If Williams returns, if Smart has to miss time, who knows what happens with Tatum. It looks like Jimmy's going to come back, and Lowry has looked great in his comeback. So certainly Miami's in the best place that they've been all series now along because they're up 2-1. So at the same time, Boston could make things much more difficult. If it comes down to a game 7, well, Miami probably has the advantage because they're at home. But let's say the Celtics team has shown the capacity to beat teams on the road as well. So
I think this is easily going to be Jason Tatum's worst game of the series. You have to expect a major bounce back from Tatum. Like, it would not surprise me if we saw another 45-point game classic.
Are we getting Celtics fans in our chat here?
No, I don't even worry about it. I saw it.
Jimmy Butler, nobody's asking that.
Nobody's calling Jimmy Butler on this. No, it doesn't matter. I don't care.
We're going to mute him.
Leave this.
Sorry, you're getting blocked.
No, I'm sorry. Marcus Smart wants to do his WWE nonsense. He can do that. That's not going to fly in Miami. By the way, if it is Heat Mavericks in the finals, that's going to be crazy, right?
Yeah. That's
going to be crazy. All right, last one here. Actually, that might be it.
You don't have more questions?
I think we're good.
I thought we had probably more.
I mean, we could do the Robert Williams thing again. Dat Guy Rouge asks, can Bam do this against Rob Williams? I don't know if we kind of talked about that earlier.
We did talk about it. More difficult, but
I don't know about 31 points, but he needs, regardless of who's in front of him, he needs to be more aggressive. Also, when we're talking about Duncan Robinson, this is why I thought they needed to play Duncan Robinson in this series, because if you have him in there instead of a non-shooter like a Caleb Martin or even Gabe Vincent, who I think is a shooter, but the Celtics aren't treating him as one, they will treat Duncan Robinson as one, and you can't have Robert Williams just on that guy hanging out in the paint. I think the Heat really need spacing in this series. I think defensively, I think they can hold up. I really do. I just think that I would rather have Duncan Robinson in the game, helping the Heat make baskets, and now defensively, at least you're getting a chance to set your defense as opposed to missing shots and then having to play in transition. Because I would rather have that set defense, even with Duncan Robinson, versus a defense playing in transition, whether it be Caleb Martin or Gabe Vincent or somebody else who's not making shots. Gabe Vincent's made shots. That's not fair to him. But like somebody like Caleb Martin.
I was just thinking about how, like, what was the difference between this and game two? And like after the game, Jimmy and everybody on the coaching staff and all the players talked about the need to improve defensively. And you're looking at the numbers. Like, yes, Boston got to the line a lot, 23 of 30 from the line. They shot 38% from 3-point range. Do you know they only took 70 field goals? Like that's disastrously low. I just didn't even realize that they barely got open looks. Miami's defense challenged them. Like, yes, a lot of those again, by nature of this defense, they allowed a lot of 3-point shots, but they were just clogging things up. They were just making things so difficult, making them go
24 turnovers.
Yeah.
It's an insane mark. Like,
yeah.
I don't care if you shoot. Like, the Celtics could have shot 50% from three tonight and still not won. Like, well, maybe they would have. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
the math says otherwise. But,
but I mean, they're not going to win games if they're going to do 24. If they're going to turn the ball over 24 times. But also, like, if this wasn't, I think like the Warriors, like they lead the league in turnovers almost every year. And some of them are obviously forced by whoever their opponent is, but a lot of them are just like lazy, stupid passes, like just throwing the ball away and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm sure the Celtics, a couple of them were just stupid passes because they just always are. But I can't really recall one off the top of my head. Every turnover that I can like think of right now from the Celtics game was just Miami literally just snatching the ball away from them, just saying it's my ball now. It was just like the meanest turnovers possible. And Jimmy Butler didn't even play half the game.
That's right. And he's like the spearhead of our team.
It would have been 34 turnovers if Jimmy Butler was in. Well,
I could just hear Spo right now in the post game, just like multiple efforts defensively forcing these turnovers.
Oh my God.
Like that's a favorite catchphrase of his. But you know what? That was the case tonight. And I'm not ready again to unleash a tirade. But for all the talk about Boston and their incredible defense and how this was historically good and Miami's clearly overmatched, shit, they held to the 70 goddamn field goal attempts. That's fucking amazing. Miami's defense does not get nearly enough credit, and they deserve it, especially after a strong showing tonight. Losing their leader in Jimmy Butler, this leading scorer in the playoffs, and having him only for half a game where he was limited during that first half too. And for them to be able to ramp their intensity defensively, get this kind of performance from Bam, get Kyle integrated back, get big performances from Victor Oladipo, Max Strus, everybody kind of just chipping in. PJ Tucker at age 37 playing some stupid, ridiculous all-NBA level type defense. Just a phenomenal thing. For how badly did the Bucks screw up by not re-signing PJ Tucker?
Oh my, don't even get me started on that, dude. Like, the Bucks really messed up by not keeping PJ. I know they were trying to pinch pennies and all that stuff, but if you're the Bucks and you have a chance to go win a championship, what?
Good
Do you think Grant Williams or PJ Tucker will be suspended?
Absolutely, it's Williams. Absolutely, it's Williams. Like Tucker mouths off a lot, and I think refs get frustrated, but he's got veteran credibility. Williams is, just to your point, so goddamn annoying. He chirps and chirps and chirps and cries and flops. It's like, dude, you weigh 280 pounds. Gabe Vincent didn't knock you to the ground. You fell. Let's get over it, all right? I mean, come on.
Grant almost picked up a technical late. He was really arguing with the ref, and the ref literally said, don't stop it, and he kept going. I was actually shocked that they didn't hit him up with the tee there late. I thought he was probably deserving of it. One last point here. We're 3 games now into this series. Like, obviously, the Heat up 2-1. They have getting home court back. Like, I think it's fair to say that they have control of the series. That doesn't mean that they're going to win this series. It's not a prediction. It means nothing. You have to go out and win these games, right? You have to go out and win these games. These past games don't mean anything for the next games. But I do think that it is clear that there is a significant advantage. It's a margin advantage. But this is a series that's going to be won on the margins. And it's not one that I think anybody saw coming. And it's Miami playing Boston's passing lanes. In 3 games, David, Miami has owned Boston's passing lanes. Tonight, they owned the passing lanes so bad that the Celtics couldn't even get the passes off. You just had them just taking the ball from the Celtics in a lot of ways. But that is something to keep an eye on, right? How do the Celtics try to counter that? Just literally, like, they're having a hard time just getting into their offense a lot of times when Miami leans defense with their lineups, whether it's Jimmy Butler or Victor Oladipo, whoever. So that is just something that has been – I don't think anybody anticipated it, considering how good Boston's offense looked in these playoffs going into this series. But the Heat have – that's something that is a significant advantage on their side. They are mucking things up for them.
Yeah. Good point. I think, a lot of it is just the nature of Boston's offense. Like, you got these two strong wing players. You got Marcus Smart occasionally hitting from the outside, creating at the rim. He also creates plays for others, but he's really their only playmaker. It's too often, I think they were reduced to one-on-one attempts, just tight ISO type ball. And they just didn't look comfortable doing it, especially on a night when Tatum's not hitting and he's being pressured by everybody on that Heat defense. They did such a good job. I can't wait to rewatch this game and see the minutia, the details of what really stood out, because they just to put the clamps on Tatum, to limit him so completely, and to your point, to be able to play those passing lanes, to be able to get these incredible performances, and all without Jimmy Butler. Imagine if you had said this after Game 1, where he scored 41 points and he was basically 90% of your offense. To be able to take him out for a half, and in a half in which he only scored 10 points or 8 points, and still be able to hold on and win this game. What a tremendous win for the Miami Heat. Absolutely incredible. I don't know. At this point, I'm just
favorite
happy.
moment of the game.
Favorite moment of the game. It's got to be the Kyle steal. That was just exciting. Just have that big moment there for him. It felt like, just getting the confirmation he was back, that he belongs here after having missed so much time, after really being a non-factor throughout Miami's deep playoff run, and now having to deal with the injury and being able to do it in the most Lowry-esque fashion possible, like just sneaking in there, grabbing a steal on an inbounds play in a crucial moment of the game, and hitting Max for a layup there. That's just phenomenal stuff. There's great, exciting, emotional moment for Lowry and for all of us.
I'm with you. I mean, like I said, flashbulb moment of these playoffs. So far the moment of the series, I think, right? This whole series. Yeah.
It's up there.
Yeah.
I know Celtics fans will point to Marcus Smart running through the hallways of the arena, but not on this podcast.
Should have just done it. You should have had a belt. You should have the whole thing. You should have came in and slapped somebody's hand, tag team. Like, you should have just, if you were gonna do your WWE thing, you should have just done it. Like, that was ridiculous, man. Whatever. Back to Kyle Lowry. He's awesome. Glad to have him back. Will be interesting to see what happens next. Hopefully Jimmy Butler is available. You know what? I'm going to say it. I hope Robert Williams is available. I hope both teams are at full strength, and I don't want any more. I don't want any excuses. I don't want anything. I want both teams full strength. Let's do this. I think it's very clear right now through 3 games. That's all I'm saying. Through 3 games, that the Heat are much closer to Boston than I think a lot of people expected, that were picking the Celtics to kind of handle this. They were basically saying that Celtics Bucks was the NBA Finals, the Eastern Conference Finals.
Well, it won't be Celtics in 5, as many people predicted either. That's for sure. So at least Miami's done that much. They've won 2 games. The series is going at least 6 games, one way or the other, and we'll see if Miami can muster enough energy for a big Game 4 win as well and take absolute control of the series. And as always, we'll be there to cover it. We'll be there on Monday, just bringing you a recap of the game. Should be fantastic. Thanks to everybody. Like, this has been by far our best live show. A Saturday night after a big Heat win, and we've got hundreds of people in the chat here sending in questions, sending in comments, sex bots. We've got it all. The full Monty.
We got it all, baby.
Yeah,
make sure if this is the first time you are tuning into the show, we are on YouTube 5 days a week minimum. We have recaps after every game in the playoffs. Check us out wherever you get podcasts, for the podcast version too. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you do it. Please subscribe. Keep listening. We will have an episode Monday morning because, like we said, David and I are going to get back onto the film. We're going to talk about some possible adjustments that we anticipate going from Game 3 to Game 4. And we've got a whole lot more. We'll have guests, which will be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B, and cheers.